Hey. Well, after a bit of a false start there, this is the weekly Photography Explained photo review club, where we are going to take a look at some images from the Photography Explained community over at Facebook, where you can find people posting literally right now. Nicholas is posting in here, and you'll see a bunch of photos, you'll see a bunch of comments, and you'll see a bunch of feedback. And we're going to run through some of these very specifically on this very live stream. So hopefully you managed to jump on. I don't know what happened then. I unplugged my Ethernet cable, I plugged it back in, and here we are. We may be live for 30 seconds like we were a second ago, or we may be live for the next hour. Who knows? But we'll give it a go. Okay, so let's jump into these images. This one, feet fight, absolute banger. Maybe you're a hair of a second late with regards to getting the sun just a tiny bit lower in the frame there. But Eugene and David have both smashed it out of the park with the feedback here. The feedback is stick an ND filter on the camera for this image, smooth out that water, and this goes from a kind of 6, 7 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 plus, because you've got these lovely lines going across. They mirror the structure here. You've got the background, you've got nice soft light, you've got this little bit of haze through the light as it's coming through underneath this structure. I think the composition is good, because this could be a tricky thing to compose, because you're obviously trying to get the sun in the right place. But these two angles are perpendicular to each other, and you've kind of mirrored them. So one's higher there, lower, higher, lower, and it works great. I think what we will do, though, is quickly throw this into Photoshop, because I think a slight crop on the image, nothing drastic, just maybe to balance it out just slightly. Let's do 4:3. Because I feel like there's a leading line here in the water, but there's not that much going on. To me, that is a slightly stronger composition, because the sky's nice, but there was just a little bit too much water there for me. But great image. I'm glad you posted it. I enjoyed seeing this when I was looking through the group earlier on today to pick out some of these photos. So yeah, nice one. Okay, right. I'm just going to double check that we are actually live, that this is actually working. Michael says, hurrah. So you're probably on the live stream 5 minutes ago that fell apart. I appreciate you, Michael. Hugo says, hi. Mikey says, it's deed. I assume you were saying it died, which it did earlier on. So I appreciate the comment. And yeah, we'll just double check. Bunch of people watching, which is kind of cool, right? So yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the very next image. Okay, so here we have a picture from Mikkel. So immediately as I see this, I see what my background here is in my office, blue. So what we will do is we'll throw this again into Photoshop. We'll just see if there's something we can do on the color balance. Also, I can hear my NAS, which is connected to a uninterruptible power supply. Uninterruptible power supply is clicking on and off. So I think we're having some power cuts at the moment, which is not ideal. And so if you hear some clicking, if you hear some buzzing, that is the USP trying to keep us online. So how long this stream lasts, who knows? Who knows? Okay, so let's go to camera raw filter. Let's see if we can just take a look at the color balance of this image. And then we can look at the image itself. There's a person down there, which is kind of interesting. Your eye gets led in. What's that person doing down there? But immediately the color temperature. I'm just trying to... And I'm not very good at adjusting the temperature and the tint, but this one is so extreme that I say not very good. I always feel like it's something that I need to work on with my own images. But what I'm trying to do here is just, these buildings should be white. So I'm just nudging them towards white. And so this isn't perfect, but you can see the difference there between the two. Now, on a lot of occasions, sure, you might want to stylize your image and have it there's a couple of images that we'll cover in a second, to stylize your image to have it toned one way or another, or to split tone it. Again, we can cover that potentially in a second as well. But on this one here, when the image is of something real, typically we want it to look somewhat close to realistic. Okay, so some critique on this image. The building here is absolutely blown out. So what we want to do, if we would shoot this again, is reduce our exposure, and we can always play around with it in post. If I select this here, you can see, although it says that, it doesn't look like it's blown out. There's just no detail in the white. So I don't know if this was taken on a phone rather than a camera, perhaps. And obviously, when we shrink it down, it's less obvious. But when it's blown up this size, now I'm doing this on a calibrated kind of 32-inch monitor, there's just no detail whatsoever on these buildings. So from an exposure perspective, that's what I'd be looking at. From a composition perspective, I think there's potentially a better composition, more kind of interesting composition for me with this person here. Maybe something more on the lines of that. I don't know. I quite like this leading. You kind of want to keep this leading line in, but the leading line is just a little bit too far away. Maybe that's what I'd be looking for. Reposition, stand a few feet to the left, so this track becomes more visible in the shot. But yeah, that's the kind of composition I'd be looking at here. But overall, as a photo, there's just not much going on. If the person here is the subject, if that's the part of interest of the frame, and you've got it framed, you've got the subject framed by the tree, by the walls, and you've got leading line from the buildings, which is all cool. But I think that's potentially a stronger looking image there. I like the wall. I like it. It's just not much detail, and the exposure for me is a little bit off. Cool. All right, so let's move on to the next photo then, because there's a whole bunch to get through today. Right, this. I don't have much to comment on, to critique, to give feedback on here, David. This, I'm actually unsure as to how you got it, because you are a perspective above this plane. So if you're in a plane taking pictures of, I assume you're a classic American kind of World War II fighter or bomber plane, then you're way beyond my skill set and scope of these reviews, mate. So yeah, Tahar says great work. David has a fair point here. It does look like a model, but that's kind of the angle that we are viewing this at, because it's an unusual angle to see it. You typically, your brain is processing this from the perspective of how would you get above this plane to take the shot unless it was a model. But I think with the propeller spinning here at such a pace, it's very unlikely to be a highly detailed model. But yeah, it's cool. Love it. I obviously get rid of this horrible watermark in the bottom corner of the frame. But beyond that, absolutely banger. Maybe there's sometimes this can be an issue and an artifact of uploading your image to Facebook, which is not your fault, David, obviously, just Facebook's compression algorithms. But there seems to be a bit of like crap up here in the top. There's certainly a light bit there. With an image like this, it's like such a good image. I would double down, get rid of some of these marks, maybe even just smooth out the entirety of the background, just so there is nothing other than this plane popping. But yeah, David, absolute banger. I appreciate you sharing this, mate. And maybe you should be doing these review sessions, mate, and giving us feedback on some of our photography. Cool. Next up, we have Tim. Tim, I think I've seen a couple of posts from you in the group, mate, so I appreciate that, as always. Lovely. Don't know what bird it is, no idea, but you've got, from someone who isn't interested whatsoever in bird and wildlife photography, other than to consume it, the images. I love the yellow. You've got the kind of color here complementing it with the red. You've got a slight more green in the background. What you can definitely do is denoise this image. So let me just show you how I would go about doing this. This isn't the fastest process in the world. So I'm going to use Luminar Neo 2. And Luminar Neo sponsored the YouTube channel just for kind of transparency on this. But we're going to open Luminar Neo. We're going to take a look at the denoiser. I'm going to see what we can do with this image. And I'll do a bit of talking because I've got a pretty fast computer, but it still takes a minute to get going. So we're going to go to noiseless AI. It's advising us to use the middle. I think middle might be a bit harsh here, but we'll do what it asks us to, and we will sit and wait. And we'll wait for. There we go. That was quicker than I was expected. So you see this background here. There's a tiny bit of noise still, but you can see there's now it's almost pleasing. It's almost, and I hate it when people say this. It's so not true and cliche. I don't know a better way of describing it. Here it looks like film grain. Here it looks like you've shot at high ISO. So I'd use a tool like Luminar Neo to knock back the noise in the background. We will throw it into Camera Raw because I feel like this being slightly out of focus, the plant on the right, is slightly distracting. So I just wonder if we can apply some lens blur and we apply some lens blur once it does its thing, scans the image, tries to add some depth to it. Can we blur out? No, see, it's this is the problem with the lens blur. It's thinking that this is in focus when it isn't. Fine, that was worth a shot just to see if we could keep the bird in focus and get rid of the outer this part of the image and blur that a little bit. Now we could go into Photoshop, we could create a mask around the bird, we could do a blur in the background, but now we're starting to get to the point of being relatively technical when it's not going to make that much of a difference to the overall image. But yeah, lovely image. You've got a few points of clipping on the bird's eye, but at this point, who really cares? Maybe a slightly different crop. Oops. I know I bang on about crops, and almost every image I have a thought and opinion on them, but is that slightly less distracting? I don't know. Potentially. There just seems to be a lot of like negative dead space on the side here, but the bird is looking in this direction. No, I think it's a good shot. I think you've done a great job. And I don't really have too much to say other than just a quick denoise using Luminar Neo, Topaz, whatever you want. If you've got the raw image and you're using Lightroom and Photoshop, obviously you can just throw it into Lightroom and do the denoising there as well. That works pretty well. All right. So, a few comments. Connie says hi from Sweden. Jim says hi from Manchester, down the road from me. I'm up in Leeds. Cool. I appreciate all your comments. Okay, so Taha, Sunrise in the Desert. Any tips on how to shoot better in such light conditions, both very bright and very dark? Maybe also how to edit this better, especially the dark half. So you've got a lens flare here. We'll take a look at the lens flare in a second. And you've got very harsh light. So depending on what camera you're using, when I used so I've been doing photography for about 2 years now. Anyone watches the YouTube channel will be sick of me saying this. Just under 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month, I think I bought. And the first camera I bought was a Fujifilm X-T5. The X-T5, for a shot like this, I would have done an exposure bracket, which means I would have took a image where the foreground is slightly brighter and a second image or third image where the background and the sun is slightly less exposed. I would then take them into Photoshop and I would do an exposure blend using luminosity mask to do so. It's a pain in the ass, takes forever, but I found luminosity masking is the best way of going about doing that. If you're unsure about luminosity masking, leave a comment and I can run through that on this live stream as well. But with that said, when I shifted over to, I've just sold them actually. They're on eBay. 2 A7R4s. I've just changed to an A7R5. Again, we might do a video on this on the Photography Explained YouTube channel, but the viewfinder on this is so superior for people wearing glasses versus the A7R Mark IV for numerous reasons. But I'm not all that blind. I can see without my glasses, but I like to keep my glasses on when I'm doing photography, and the viewfinder on this is superior for glasses users. So that's why I've upgraded. No other reason other than that, basically. So with that all said, with the A7R Mark V, the dynamic range is so high that I've just stopped exposure bracketing now. So an image like this, I would do in one shot with the A7R Mark V with most other cameras, you'd want to take 2 shots and combine them later. Taha, that's the feedback for this image. Now, let's throw this into Photoshop and take a look at the actual edit of it itself. Cool. So with regards to the edit, you've got here this flare. Now, it's unfortunate where it is in that it's on the subject, because you've got these lovely lines, you've got this light just dappling across, and you've got the sun here, which is another image. The other issue you've got here is it's almost like a burnt sun. It's almost like a film frame where the exposure on a certain part of the image is literally burnt through the chemicals in the film. But you've also got these lines, and you've got this transition into a nice kind of color in the background. So the image itself is worth taking a look at. So I'm going to open Camera Raw Filter. I'm just going to see if I'm going to do this very quickly, but if you were to take your time, you'd have a decent shot at just shifting this. So I'm just going to shift that part. I'm going to add another gradient filter here. We'll just remove some of the highlights, maybe just take the edge off it. So we almost want to. So again, very quickly, but you can see how with a little bit more time editing, you could have a decent job at getting rid of that. In fact, can we just use the remove tool? Might be a bit hit or miss this, but see if we can just attack this flare just a little bit. And I'll keep chatting as it works. So it's not done a very good job there, but you can see the difference. With a little bit more tweaking, we can resolve that. So once that's done, the other thing that we want to potentially take a look at is this sun here, because it's just really harsh, really sharp. And the quickest way to start to deal with this is a bit of negative dehaze. So we might do a few layers of this. And you can even increase the exposure potentially. But see how, hopefully this comes across over the live stream, but see how that just adds a layer of softness across the sunrise there. So we might want to, and it's fine for this the actual sun to be white, to be absolutely blown out, because obviously the sun is pretty warm. But what we want to do, or what I find is most pleasing, is we can just soften all this off. And there's a few ways to go about doing it, but negative dehaze is one way. So now we've kind of ruined the exposure of the sun itself. So we might go back in here and just boost the exposure of that. So again, we get this kind of soft, gentle sun now, which becomes a little bit more, to my eye anyway, becomes just a bit more pleasing. And we're slowly chipping away at this big burnt out patch underneath. So again, the sun can be overexposed. So that's the kind of thing I'd be doing. Then you want to take a look at, where do you want your viewer to be looking? And obviously we want the viewer to at least be able to catch I assume it's a guy and a camel down here. So can we just boost the shadows slightly? There's 2 camels and 1 bloke. So that's what we are thinking, right? And again, then, is there a crop? This is making it a bit more like a basic photo, as in like using the rule of thirds. The sun's there, the camels are on that side. I think we've got a bit too much sky in that now. But yeah, that to me is now this is starting to look like a still from a film, as opposed to a random shot, rather than like a snapshot. So the only thing that we can potentially take a look at here now is, can we add a bit of a vignette just to suck the viewer's eye towards this part of the frame? So we're going to create a radial gradient. I'm going to invert it, pull the exposure back just slightly. And then we might increase the exposure of the actual full image here. We're starting to blur out some of the colors. I'm not sure if that really worked, but just to draw the viewer's eye towards the camels and the chap there. So yeah, I would love to go to a location like this. I should go to a location like this. I hopefully will go to a location like this. But you're spoilt if you live anywhere near this or get to spend any time in the desert. And so that's what I'd be looking to do. Obviously, we don't have the raw file here. I'm doing my best to save it from what we do have as a massively compressed kind of Facebook image or image on Facebook. But yeah, that's a few things to think about, Taha. Okay, next up. This is really pretty. I actually really like the depth of field here in that there's enough in focus at the front of the image that it's not just a mess of background blur, but there's also, because they're so kind of small and threaded, there's enough gaps between each of these, wherever the plant is, that there is kind of room to look through it and wonder what's behind it. Only critique is you got this big corner and it's very dark. You know, could you have turned 10 degrees towards the right and had the entirety of the frame covered in these plants? Could you just zoom in slightly? Probably. I won't do it here, but you could definitely zoom in slightly and get that same effect. But no, this is a lovely photo. Here, Jacob says, this photo really caught my eye in the feed. I like how it's both kind of complex in a messy way that makes you stop and look, which reveals the sharper details. Yep, exactly. Jacob is a more articulate man than what I am. But yeah, it grabs my attention because it's patternful, as in this could make a nice print, big print to be on a big wall in somewhere like a hotel, a restaurant, somewhere fancy. But again, once you then look at it and study it, there's lots of detail to keep your attention and to keep you looking at the image. The only thing is this big corner. If you had a dark patch in this bottom corner and so it bounced out, or there was a reason for this, as in, you know, maybe there's a bird sat in the top corner, that'd be obviously perfect, ideal. We can AI a bird in there if you like. Other than that top corner being dark, I think this is a lovely image. Cool. Okay, Nikki, Northern Lights. Is there an explanation? There is no explanation of this specific image. So the problem with this, I went to Leforton earlier on in the year, and one of the things that Stuart McGlennon, world-class landscape photography, it was his workshop that I went away on with him, also a world-class photographer called Dem as well. One of the things that they kind of drilled into me over and over again was that Northern Lights is beautiful, it's lovely, but it isn't a shot on its own. You need a strong foreground. I'm not sure this building in the midground has enough interest to match the Northern Lights here. I do wonder if, I won't throw it into Photoshop this time, but I wonder if there's a crop on this side of the frame so you capture more of the Northern Lights, you cut out some of the background that the dark patch up here in the top right corner that we just don't need. And I wonder if there's an abstract building shot down here, like almost like an architectural shot. Again, I don't think cropping this in Photoshop is going to do the job, but on the day there, that was probably like, I will just throw it into Photoshop. It's sometimes easier just to show rather than tell, right? So perhaps, again, I don't think the crop here is going to do it justice, but perhaps on the day there was some kind of shot like this that has just an interesting shape in the foreground, which then, you know, if you could align it with any of the Northern Lights above it, would get the job done. But it's a cool location. I don't know if this looks like some kind of bar or hotel or something. And I'm very jealous you got a opportunity to even see the lights of this, Northern Lights of this, because it's very beautiful. But that would be the feedback on this one. And obviously the problem is it's pretty dark. So you've got to go beforehand, before you go to take the shot, to get kind of acquainted with the environment, to know where your foreground is going to be, even just to put a rock or move some dirt or snow around so that you can come back and find the same place later on. Okay, this shot I absolutely love. I think this is absolute banger, and it makes me feel slightly weird, right? So you have Edson on an RF 800mm, so this is miles away that he's shooting into at 800 millimeters. I love the color. I love the cold tones of the outside of this building, contrasted with the warm tones inside. I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on the Photography Explained YouTube channel. You won't see this if you watch the YouTube videos for at least another couple of weeks, as we're a couple of weeks ahead with the recording, or at least a week ahead with the recording. But as I try to do more B-roll and more cinematic B-roll, so hopefully can separate a lot of the other channels that just have it's just a dude or a lady walking around with a camera taking random pictures. As we try to get more cinematic and improve the production value of the B-roll of the content, one of the things that keeps coming up in all of the training that I'm doing and the videos that I'm watching on cinematic filmmaking is warm versus cold. And I've been doing this, when you watch films, there's often a warm character and a cold background. That's how you get that. You get the subject to stand out in the frame, and that's exactly what's happened here. What makes this particularly weird to me is these Crocs that are probably a kid's Crocs. It's very voyeuristic, or it could be a lady. There's a lady's jacket there potentially, but it's very, very voyeuristic. Again, the juxtaposition between the cold of the outside of the building, the warm of the inside of the building, and we just show Edson here has shown just enough that you know what it is, but not too much that the story's been told for you, if that makes sense. It's like, why is he looking into this building? Is this his ex-wife that he's stalking? And we're reviewing this photo innocently on this live stream, and Edson's just about to go to prison for stalking charges. Who knows? Obviously, not saying that is true, but that's the vibe I get from the picture. And when you get a strong vibe like that, that to me immediately qualifies it as a strong photo. So I appreciate you sharing it, Edson. Good man. Cool. Let's move on. Here we have Chengi. Frozen in time as the world goes by. Took the shot a few hours ago after visiting Silov. I like the pose. I like the bold red jacket against the blue sky. Obviously, the people moving by is cool. The only thing I would suggest is the background is just really not interesting. This would be a much stronger photo, either in some kind of woodland or where there's some trees and you're wondering why. I want to wonder, why is this kid stood there with these Pokemon hat on with a rushing of people going by either side? When I look at this particular shot with this background, I think dad or relative friend was probably bored and took a picture to create some kind of effect. It's a cool effect. We're just missing that little bit of story on the back end of it. Again, this could be, if this was in a city at night, this young lad, assuming it's a lad, could be a girl, can't really tell. Don't want to make assumptions here because this image is not very high quality, having been uploaded to Facebook and compressed. This individual, they, at night, street light pointing down, crowds come back and forth, similar kind of thing. Why they stood there, what's happened, what's gone right, what's gone wrong. This is just kind of the edge of a car park, and so that's what spoils the image to me. But it's a cool concept. I've never taken an image like this. Yeah, I like it. But they would be the few things that I would add or want to change. Cool. Make sure that we're still online after the initial faffing around, and we are, which is fantastic. Connie shares, this group is making me think more about cropping. Yes, I think you should think, Connie, perhaps more about composition in the field, but then after the fact, I crop all the time. I never get things perfect in camera. I never really try. I try to get things as perfect as I can, knowing that with the Sony A7R4 or 5, there's 60 megapixels, so I can crop the heck out of it if I need to after the fact. So yeah, composition rather than cropping, but yes, absolutely cropping after the fact. So another photo from Tim here. Cool photo. This is a step up from a lot of the images that get posted in the Facebook group are bird on stick. I'm not interested in birds. I'm interested in interesting images of birds, but I've got no interest in like a specific bird. So sometimes I feel like someone's got a bird on a stick image, and it's probably a cracking image because it's some rare bird that's very difficult to capture, or it's in one location and it should be in another location, or something like that. So I miss the premise, whereas a wildlife photographer might see more to that image than what I do. But an image like this, you put Tim here, it looks like he's celebrating. For me, it looks like he's just having a bit of a stretch. It's just been a tough morning, and this poor fella just having a perch, having a stretch, especially with the curve of the bird's neck here. Just having a stretch and getting warmed up. But yes, very beautiful bird, nice picture. I appreciate you posted it, Tim. Okay, Michelle. First post here, I did a little play on the first temptation. Got a bunch of comments here as well, a bunch of feedback. Apple, snake, hand. I think it could be the way that the image has been uploaded to Facebook here, but it looks slightly out of focus. That's the only thing I would say. If you are doing studio-based shots like this, they have to be absolutely bang on focus-wise. Our brains are just less forgiving in a shot that's been set up versus a wildlife shot or a shot out in the open. Landscape shot. The only things I would be suggesting are, it looks like the snake has been blown out slightly here. It's out of focus there. Fine, it's not end of the world. I would just like the snake to be looking at me, or maybe looking at the apple, just engaging a little bit more potentially. And yeah, as Costa's commented here, the red apple is a little bit too attention grabbing potentially. So maybe reduce the saturation on the apple just to take the edge off it. I think you've blown out the highlights on the snake, which is fine. If you've got the, obviously you'll have the raw image, so you can pull that back down and add a little. There just seems to be detail missing in the snake here. And then just the snake's face, but the composition and the lines of the snake is really cool and interesting. I would just like the snake to be looking at me, looking at the apple, doing something other than kind of escaping out the bottom corner of the frame. But yeah, Michelle, good photo. This is, I don't know how you hire a snake, or if you've got snakes as pets. How, I don't know where you go to hire a snake for a photo shoot. That's like an interesting problem to ponder for another occasion, maybe. Cool. Excuse me. We have Mubarak, very very active in the group. I appreciate you, mate. Okay, let's throw this sucker into Photoshop. Let's see if we just polish this up, because I don't know if this is a wild owl or what, but it's a really cool owl. The immediate thing to me is it's just very flat from top to bottom, and the owl itself, rightly so, because it's trying to camouflage itself and so it can sneak up on its prey, is very similar to the color of the background. So I just wonder if we can add a vignette around the owl. Again, just do this very quickly. Invert that mask, add a vignette. Then I wonder if we can add, again, very quickly, some clarity to the owl itself, just to make it pop. So you could do this with a curve as well, but the quick way to do it is just a bit of clarity. The clarity doesn't seem to be, I was doing a little bit. Just make it pop a little. We probably want to increase the brights, where we are with highlights. Interesting. The image might have been more flat than what it appears in the first instance, because seems to have lots of room to move on these sliders. Well, you can see the histogram up here. There's not much, if anything, clipping. How far can we go? We go for way further. Okay, so there we go. So now we've lost a little bit more detail in the feathers down here. So maybe I'd want to just pull that back again. We're just trying to add a bit of contrast to these feathers. The contrast will make it, won't make it look anything. It will highlight the details that are already there. So the global contrast isn't really doing it. Let's pull this down. I'm just going to do a bit of an S curve to pull that sucker up. So if you can see there, that coming on and off. And so if we were going to go deep into it, we'd be doing that across the entirety of the owl, probably pulling out more of its face and an S curve up here, potentially to draw our eyes to the face of the owl. But yeah, I mean that this image is justified a little bit of work on it, I think. I wonder if just warming it up slightly. So it's probably a little bit off from a like reality perspective, but yeah, that's what I'd be thinking. But it's a cool bird. It's looking directly at the camera as well. I think that's what is almost menacing. So that's what I'd be looking at for an image like this. Obviously, I've done it very quickly. I had to spend a bit of time because that's a really cool image. So yeah. Let's go back to the group. And what have we got next? Next up, we have Edson. Interior of the building of the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism in the University of Sao Paulo. Right. What you've done here is you've taken a snapshot when you had ample opportunity to focus in on basically any part of this building because it looks really interesting, the whole shebang of it. So I'm going to pull this into Photoshop. I'm hopefully we can pull an image from this to show what I mean. I'm just going to take a quick look. Cool. I appreciate all the comments, everyone. Nice. Cool. So an image like this. So immediately I'm thinking a square face-on image of... Where's the brush? That's not the brush. Brush. Oh. Deselect. A square face-on image of this. Of either the 1-1 or the, I guess it's Spanish, the Spanish text would be cool. So there's definitely a shot of the roof up here. We'll try cropping that in a second, just as a pattern across the frame. There's also, I bet, a shot more straight on like this. So you've got the dark and the light, and the dark and the light side of the concrete building, and all this wonderful texture, and then these lights running through it. And I bet you this floor, if you could get up on perhaps up here on this balcony, I bet you this floor has a bunch of really interesting textures. If you shot down, hopefully, maybe not, but hopefully you get a reflection of the roof up here, bouncing on the floor, but it looks like a concrete floor that has been just battered over the years. And so there's a load of lovely textures down there as well. So that's what I would be thinking about if I was to visit. Even these windows here, because whenever there's a window, it works better. This works better when it's outside and there is rain, and so reflections on the windows and texture on the windows. But whenever there's windows that are open at different angles, and these ones are obviously not open at all there, you can, with a bit of a kind of a wander around the room with a long lens and zooming into it, you can often find different textures and shapes and patterns that are only existing as reflections in these windows. So that would be what I'd also be taking a look at. Anything else while we're here? Anything else of interest? Don't know. The top of this image, though, this is what I would have been focusing on. Just like a pattern like that. So obviously I'm butchering this slightly. We'll just straighten it up. So something like that is what I'd be looking for, which still isn't straight, but I don't know why. That's what I'd be looking for. These patterns, these shapes, these reoccurring, again, shapes and patterns moving towards somewhere in a specific direction. That to me, if you throw a bunch of contrast on here now, and if you got this framed up perfectly on location, and you got everything squared off, and you'd have to use a tripod for this, get everything squared off, you would absolutely get a cracking shot here, because more than anything, just the textures that are on the concrete. I assume this is concrete. On the roof, the floor, all the way around the building. So yeah, cool location. I think should just slightly been, what would be a good way of putting it? You've been slightly lazy in your approach to grabbing the shot here, and again, you've taken a snapshot, even down here. Just as I look at it, this juxtaposition of these lines going from right to left to right to left, that could be a cool square crop there as well. So if you got access to this building, you got loads of opportunity to take images in. But Edson, I appreciate you, mate. I appreciate you posting this one in the group. Right, we'll do a couple more images and then we will wrap up because I need to walk the dog. I wish it was more exciting than that, but that is where we are right now. Cool. We have a picture from Patrick. Antwerp at night. Any feedback? You've done the right thing in finding a foreground here and you've got some reflections. What we need is way closer to this leaf at a lower angle so that we reduce some of this mid-ground just messiness. So if you got lower, what you'll find is that this reflection line would be closer to the, I guess, the horizon line here at the bottom of these trees. So the trees would then blend more in with the reflection, and the building would be more with the reflection. The leaf would be bigger and more prominent in the frame. It's kind of on the little bit of the edge of the frame here. We wanted it to be, we would like it to be a bit more towards the middle, kind of bottom quarter. So you got the right idea, just slightly wrong execution. But there'll be loads of leaves around in puddles at this location, and so it's well worth going back and getting a shot like that. But otherwise, it looks like the leaf is slightly out of focus as well. So this is probably a shot that you'd have to focus stack or shoot at like f16, f20 or something like that to get it all in focus. But the exposure is great, and that's typically the thing that people screw up in night cityscape shots. And so you've done a lot right here. I would just change that one thing. And again, as I say that, as I look at it a bit longer, you definitely need more space at the bottom of the frame to give this leaf a bit of room to breathe. But if you were doing a touristy shot, then again, more room at the bottom of the frame for this leaf, then that'd be fine. If you really want to go to arty, kind of big foreground, like cityscape, landscape shot, then my kind of initial feedback of getting lower still stands. Cool. Now, I really like this image. I saw this one, Jables, when you posted this to the group. So this is obviously a reflection, and so it's a shot that's upside down that has been flipped around in post to give the appearance that we're looking at this in the foreground and the clouds in the sky. I really like this. It's almost purpose. I'd get rid of this stuff on the side here. I'd just use the AI remove tool in Photoshop to get rid of that. Maybe right. Let's put it into Photoshop. This might be the last image that we take a look at now. I think it's worth just having a quick look at this. Size 15. Let's get this bigger. Cool. Let's get rid of this crap here. That doesn't need to be there. And now, my gut feeling is this is, we could add way more contrast to the image, basically. So if I undo this, so you can see in the histogram, the top corner here, we've got loads of space at the bottom of the histogram. So if we wanted to, we could pull the black point, make that darker. We could pull the white point just to stretch out the histogram just before we start getting any clipping. And that to me is already, it's only subtle, but more interesting. Now, the issue we have now is the dark bits have got darker. And so what we want to do is add a linear gradient up here. Oops. Add a linear gradient and just balance out some of the shadows slightly, I think, just to raise them up. They're getting a bit muddy there, which is fine. So it's a little bit gray. Because this top corner now is a bit strong in the frame. So with a raw image, you could crank this up and correct it, right? With what we have right now, that is the best we're going to be able to do. So it's just this part here. Fine, but you get the point. And now I would go a lot bolder. So this may just be a saturation job. But it may also then just be, again, tweaking the highs and the lows to keep stretching them more and more. So I know we're clipping in this bottom corner here, but we could add if we're clipping down there, but we still want the global effect on the image, then we just add a radial gradient down here just to pull back the highlights so they're not clipping. But that to me now is bold, almost like Simpsons introduction like. I love the texture that we've got from the water. And yeah, get rid of this on the side. That was just distracting. I like it. I think this is a really cool image. And just a few subtle tweaks and changes there. I think you could probably even go even further. I think you could get this blue really saturated. I think you could double down on the lightness. We're kind of hitting the barrier here of the JPEG file that's been, again, uploaded to Facebook and so is massively compressed. But there's so much detail and texture here that can be pulled out. And I think this would, imagine this printed massive in a gallery. A shot like this, I think, would do really well. It's a kind of shot I would sit and ponder. Maybe not sit, I'd stand. I would stand and ponder and have a good old look at this with a few little bits of editing. I think you're kind of 90% of the way there. It's cool. I'm going out shooting tomorrow morning. I'm going to take a look if there's an opportunity to get a shot similar. Cool. We'll wrap up there then. One thing that I'll leave you all with is, if you enjoy these videos, you want to support the channel, you want to help us grow and just generate more content, we've got a bunch of products. One of the products we cover seemingly all the time on these videos, on these live streams, that is a product that I have on composition. So if you are finding yourself taking snapshots and you'd like to compose your images in a slightly more professional landscape photographer kind of way, then this is well worth checking out. There's a link to this in the description of this video. Also, just go to Photography Explained and you can see all the products that are up there. There's a bunch of stuff that hopefully might be of interest to you. So that is it. We'll wrap up this week's Photography Explained Photo Review Club live stream with that. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the comments, everyone tuning in live. I appreciate the comments of everyone who tune in after the fact, when the video goes up on Facebook, on YouTube, that sort of things. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with you on next